part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Scott Sabol.
And I'm John Sabol. Thanks for tuning in.
This is part two of our conversation with Coach Mike Fratello. If you have not listened to part one, you can go ahead and do that. It leads right into our discussion here. A lot of great stuff here from Mike Fratello in part one. I'm really looking forward to part two because we're going to start talking more about the current Cavs, the current state of the NBA, and his thoughts on that, and kind of get a behind the scenes on what he's doing in his spare time too.
I'm really curious to hear what Coach's thoughts are on the current Cavs lineup and how they're actually really surprising the NBA, it'd be one of the surprise teams of the league by going so big with all those 7-footers they have. Plus, I want to know what his thoughts are on the Collin Sexton situation, not so much on the injury, but on the dilemma of what they're going to potentially do with him. Can he fit in with those guys? And we'll also go down memory lane in the old Richfield Coliseum days. If you've listened to our podcast in the past, Scott and I love reflecting and having some nostalgia to the old venue. So we're going to get into part two with former Cavaliers head coach Mike Fratello coming up right after this.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline Podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. This is part two of our conversation with former Cleveland Cavaliers head coach Mike Fratello. Scott and I get into discussion with Coach about this current Cavaliers team. But first, it's the topic every NBA fan likes to debate. You coached against Michael Jordan. You even coached against LeBron in his first few seasons. You covered many LeBron's games over the last 15 years, working for TNT, the Yes Network, NBA TV, Fox Sports Ohio, et cetera. I'm just going to straight up ask you, Czar, who's better, LeBron or Jordan? Who's the GOAT?
You said, I think I remember you guys talking about that I coached a long time ago.
I think that was two longs, Coach.
Too long, not
three.
It was
two. Yeah,
it was just two. Okay, so it wasn't that long ago. So therefore, that makes me old school. Therefore, I am allowed to say that they are probably the two greatest players to impact their teams and the league that we've seen. Having said that, how do you compare Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Michael Jordan and LeBron James? I mean, how do you compare them when those three people I mentioned are big men who dominated the front, the basket around the rim, scoring wise, defensively, 9, 10, 11 championship rings when you combine coaching along with playing. And then you look at what Michael did for the Bulls and his the 2-3 championship runs that he had. And who knows, if he didn't go try and play baseball, it could have been even longer than that. And then LeBron comes along, they always say there'll be somebody to replace, the other great ones. Well, how much greater will someone be than LeBron? And let's face it, God willing, he stays healthy. He's going to pass Kareem as far as the all-time leading scorer. He has championships in 2 different places. He does so much on the court. And to me, the biggest thing people should talk about, if and when that day comes that he passes Kareem in scoring, make sure you remember how many assists he has, because that's where he has been so great in passing the ball to his teammates and making them. He made the game easier for them. He allowed them to be more successful than they probably would have been without LeBron being a teammate of theirs. And he's gotten so many of them championship rings, just like Michael did with the 6 championships in Chicago.
So who are you going to pick as the GOAT then? Which one? If you had to pick one, I can't leave you off the hook.
You know what? I don't have to answer that because you asked me to be on your show. And that's why I want you.
Man, well played, Coach. Well played. All right.
So, Coach, let's talk about the current Cavs. This is a really young team, and they're the surprise team of the NBA. At least through the first, couple weeks of the season, they're exciting to watch for the first time in a long time. Do you think this is sustainable for them?
This is the old Cavs team brought back again. Larry Nance, Brad Daugherty, Hot Rod Williams. Well, how
so
about
many
that
bigs.
Front line? Laurie Markkinen, and you got Allen up there, and you got Mobley. What a great threesome they have, all between 6'11" and 7 foot. And kudos to JB Bickerstaff for the job he's done, but more importantly, to the front office, Kobe Altman, and coaching staff working hand in hand and saying, you know something, why don't we try something different? You see, I've always felt, and I heard this from Hubie Brown many, many years ago, a team has to have an identity. And there are so many teams in the league that don't know what their identity is or don't have an identity. But your team has to have an identity, whether that's your identity is an unbelievable defensive team or a crazy, relentless rebounding team, or a team that shoots 53s a game, or a team that puts up like the old Denver teams that puts up 125, 130 points a game. What was the identity going to be of this group? And what they have done is they've gone back, brought the big man back, not 1, not 2, but 3 of them playing at the same time in the starting lineup and have had terrific success early on in the season. I felt so bad watching the end of that game last night, heartbroken that they lost that one because, and I'm sure they'll learn a number of things. Nobody wants to miss a foul shot when they go to the free throw line. They don't do it intentionally. Missed free throws add up. That's why you have to be a good free throw shooting team at the end. One breakdown defensively gives a guy who had made 5 threes an open look at the basket. He knocks down the 3 for the other team. Those little things early in the year hopefully will pay off for them at the end. But the fact that they had the courage to be different, not be like everyone else and play small all the time, to have these guys who have size that can play together, pass the ball to each other, can defend together. It allows them to do so many things and play so many ways. And what they're doing well. So I am really impressed with this group thus far.
Yeah, good point. A lot of those bigs kind of remind you of those early Cavs teams that you were a part of there with Z and Vitali and those guys. I mean, the Cavs have loaded up on so many 6'10" and taller guys. And it's a lineup that you have seen that has worked sustainably a little bit recently with the Lakers winning the title. There were 3 bigs there. So I'm sure the Bucks just did it too with Giannis and Brook Lopez and Portis. So it has worked. I'm not saying the Cavs are at a championship level, but it has worked in recently too in this new age of the NBA. Talking about some of the Cavs players, I know Collin Sexton is out with that torn meniscus, but do you think, I'm just curious about what you think about this. Like, can his game consistently be a fit with Garland and these new lineup of bigs?
That's what they have to discover, whether 2, I'll call them smaller guards, and Sexton is tough as they come. He takes the contact, gets to the rim. He's going to be a scorer every night in the NBA because he gets fouled. He goes to the free throw line and he makes his foul shot. He's an excellent free throw shooter. He's gotten better with his 3-point shot. He's fast as lightning when he has the ball in his hand going from end to end in transition. So he outruns defenders at time when he gets out on those one-man breaks. But he's not 6'5", 6'6", the prototypical NBA guards, okay, like the old Clyde Frazier type guards of 6'4" guys that'll back it down, shoot a Oscar Robertson type guards. But can the two guards make up for their lack of height with their shooting ability? Garland, we understand Garland is a shot maker. Can they defend enough with those three big guys behind them, protecting the front of the rim, that teams that have guards that try to abuse other teams, that they're not going to take advantage of the Cavs guards. And that's going to be one of the biggest decisions that front office and coaching staff have to get together on and agree on is, can we move forward with these two guys together as our starting guards in the backcourt? I'm not sure you can bring one of them off the bench now. Maybe without me knowing their personalities, without me knowing exactly what they're all about as far as what's going on upstairs in their head. Coaches know that, front office knows that from seeing them day in and day out and working with them. Some guys just can't accept the role of coming off the bench, and they sulk and they pout and they go. Remember now, when contract time comes to renew a contract, that's a big decision for a team nowadays, because it's not like, well, we're going to offer so-and-so a 4-year deal at $8 million a year. No, that's gone by. $32 million is nothing. Okay. So this is a 4-year contract at $25 million a year that you're talking about with the players nowadays, the ones that are good. And that's a major commitment by a team to not get stuck with a contract that they can't get rid of, and the player is not as productive as they thought he was going to be. So these are big, big decisions for the Cavs front office and coaching staff down the road.
Just my 2 cents. And what am I? I'm just a, TV sports anchor reporter. I don't think you can have and tell Sexton to come off the bench after telling him for the last few years that he is the guy. I don't know. I know he's a hard worker and he's a selfless player and he's a good teammate. Well, sometimes he could be selfish. That's just, again, my opinion. But I know he could maybe do it, but I don't know mentally if that's probably the best for him. I think what's probably going to happen if they can't work together, I think they probably may have to trade him. That's just my opinion. We can look back on this year as we record this in November and see what they'll do. But that's just my thing. I wonder what they'll do, because they do have that contract looming. So, but
hold on, let me throw something out at you that you bring that up. Okay, so having said that, let me play the devil's advocate and ask you: do you have somebody better? Can you find somebody better? Can you draft somebody better? Can you get a guy coming out of college that's going to get you 18 points a game to 20 points a game?
Yeah,
because that's what you. And you know what? This could be a blessing in disguise, meaning they're going to learn how to play without Collin Sexton. And can they win their share of games without Collin being there? Can the other guys that they have now step up and replace the points per game, replace the steals, what he gives them at the defensive end as far as steals go? All of that will kind of play out over the next month and a half. And maybe that'll help them in the decision-making process.
You're right. And to answer all your questions, the answer is no, because you can't find those and they don't grow on trees. and here's the other thing too, Coach, and this, you take a long time to develop these players. And if this Cavs team continues to do well, they're not going to be in a position to draft a player like that. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully, if it gets to that point, he's going to accept that role if it gets to that point. We'll have a couple more questions and then we'll let you go. Wanted to ask you about, we talked about this is sustainable, and it is. You think it is? If it's sustainable enough to be a playoff team come spring, what are your thoughts on that?
You're talking about the Cavs lineup and the team they're playing with right now, I'm assuming, correct?
Correct. In current setup.
Okay. I think yes, for sure. On the road and proven that they can win on the road against good teams at tough places to play. They lost a tough one last night, but as Campy Russell said after the game, he said they have nothing to hang their head about. I mean, that Washington is a very good team. And both teams were missing key pieces to their teams, but you had two teams that have played very well, have caught the NBA by surprise, and have the NBA talking about them right now. And it comes down to, what, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds left in the game, and they're dead even with each other. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. Are they built for injuries? We'll find out. Because if they're whole and healthy, think about it. Wouldn't you be happy with the second unit coming off the bench of Kevin Love? All right. Then you got our Turkish flash, Jetty Osman. Okay. Jetty coming off the bench. Dean Wade, you can put him wherever you want. You want to play him alongside Kevin Love. You got some depth there. Then where is Okoro going to wind up? Is he going to wind up in the starting unit when Laurie comes back again? Markkanen, he is not a starter anymore because you got Markkanen along with the other two bigs. So you got Okoro with that second unit. I mean, think about it. They have some depth here on this team. So having said that, now you get tested with the protocol thing for Kevin and for Markkanen, and now the injury to Sexton. Let's see how they survive this period of time with that depth that they have. But they've been built to play. They can play big. They can play small. They have flexible pieces in there. And if they can avoid the injury, which, so many teams get knocked out of the contention just because of injuries that knock key guys out. If they can avoid more serious injuries as the year goes on, they have a legitimate chance of being a playoff team for sure.
So, Coach, this is kind of a semi-personal question. You do a lot of traveling, right? You're back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast, with all the games that you're doing. What do you do to keep your energy level so high? Is there anything you do on a daily basis that you just rest and relaxation, or something special that you do?
It's probably pasta. The amount of pasta that I eat, okay, it weighs the plane down with my luggage. However, me getting on with a full stomach of some type of pasta is what keeps my energy level up.
That's classic. So,
Coach, a little red wine every now and then to go along with it.
So a quick story here. So when I worked with Mr. Goddard, Mr. Goddard had an address book and he had all these phone numbers in it, and he would always talk about it. And me and a buddy of mine were always talking, and we would have discussions about baseball. And Bob Feller's name came up, and we were going back and forth about Bob Feller. And Mr. Goddard was off to the side, and he goes to us and goes, well, Scotty, I have his number right here if you want to call him. And we look at him and say, Mr. Goddard, you win. You win. You have Bob Feller's phone number. With all of the people you have run into over the years, is there anybody you have in your cell phone, a big celebrity that you could call right now, just right there on speed dial? Just give us one name.
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Somebody just random. Yeah. Like you mentioned Marv Albert before. Is there a celebrity you can go, you know what? I have that phone number if you want it.
Well, I will say this though. Before I give you the answer, let me say this. Do you know what day Dick Goddard was born on? The date, not the year, but the date.
Yeah, it was like February 24th. Is that right?
February 24th. Do you know what day Mike Fratello was born on?
No way. The same date?
February 24th. So
wow.
There are about 3 or 4 people that on February 24th used to always call each other and say, happy birthday, happy birthday. It's incredible, but that's, and obviously the greatest month that people can be born, the month of February. Just ask Charles Barkley. He'll tell you he was born in February. Michael Jordan, born in February. Just happens to be that, Dick Goddard, born in February. There you go.
That is great.
Oh, that is really funny.
Now I'm supposed to answer, who could I dial?
Yeah, it's just a fun question. You don't have to answer it. I was just curious because you mentioned a lot of names there with the movie you were in. And it's like, wow, there's got to be somebody you could call up right now and you could go, and they would go, hey, Czar, how's it going?
How about, do you want basketball world? Do you want
it can be anybody.
You want like a Shaq, or you want a Barkley, or do you want like a Jack Nicholson in that world? Or
sure. Yes to all of that. Whatever. How
about local? How about that I could call Scott Sabol? I could call Stephanie Schaefer. They might be people that return a call to me. You never know.
That's true.
That's good stuff.
I've been blessed. I've met so many people.
Sure.
I would have said Tommy Lasorda's in there. Tommy passed recently. He's one of my closest friends, and I've been blessed meeting so many people, working with Shaq, working with Barkley on the TNT set over the years. So there's a couple names on my phone that I think I could call and get a response from. That's great.
When I worked in West Virginia, Coach, I got a chance to meet and interview Shaq and Barkley at a fundraiser event of all places. And those two guys are hilarious, kind, and just they're just like you see on TV too. But there's also a little softer side on those two as well. And I'm going back 10 years ago when I did that, but I've always heard good things about those two guys, and I can only imagine the fun stories you could have with them. And I'm sure we could do an entire podcast episode just on that.
No, they're legitimately good people. If Charles Barkley says something, he's going to do it. I mean, if he promises something, if he says something, he's going to do it. That's who he is. That's what he's about. And, he's going to give his opinion. Everybody doesn't agree with his opinions all the time, but he's being honest with you. I would love to see, I think one of the things down deep with Charles is that he would love the opportunity to be in the front office of a franchise. And I hope at some point, some team will give him, I think people look and say, well, would he be serious enough, or would he dedicate the time? He'll dedicate and do what he has to do to make something work. I'll tell you that. And if you gave him a chance, he would do that. And he would be successful in the end, because that's, he loves the competition. He loves going out and making something good happen, or him being part of putting it together. And Shaq right now, I mean, does anybody have more commercials on TV than Shaquille O'Neal? I mean, he's got every product going.
Right.
You turn a channel, there's Shaq doing a different commercial for a different person, a different company. So I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. You always hear fun stories about him, and same thing with Chuck too. So, Coach, before we let you go, we're going to have a fun little section here. It's called Rapid Fire. Scott and I will go bounce some quick questions for you. They're fun questions. They could be basketball related. They could be hobby related, just to show a side of you that our listeners listening to this podcast would want to know about. So without further ado, let me just start real quick with this. Your favorite Cavs players, because I know I'm not going to leave it to one, but your favorite Cavs players you've ever coached.
Mark Price, Terrell Brandon, Bobby Sur, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Danny Ferry, Brevin Knight. Unfortunately, didn't have Brad and didn't have Larry long enough that I could say, they felt, Bobby Phils. I have to mention Bobby Phils along the way. There were so many, Tyrone Hill. I had a great appreciation for Ty and Shaquille. On Sean Kemp, because of how hard those two big men worked and the grunt work that they did for us. And they were really favorites along the way. And that, you said Cavaliers, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not allowed to throw in like the Dominiques and Docs from the Atlanta days.
Go for it.
Mm-hmm. The Memphis days of Pau Gasol and that group of guys together. I was blessed along the way. Remember, Kyle Lowry, that was our draft pick in Memphis when I was coaching Memphis in my last year, and he played first 9 games, and broke his wrist. I didn't have him the rest of the season.
Oh, man, that's right.
So, Coach, what is your favorite current Cavs player to watch?
Gosh, I might say I love Allen. Love watching Allen. Love him. I love the rookie's he's so fortunate to have Allen alongside of him, because if he just keeps looking and listening to what Allen is saying to him, it's going to help his development and progress that much more. So those two guys in tandem, I really enjoy watching together. And then maybe, and this is just me, maybe the glue to that group is Lauri Markkanen, because as a 6'11", 7-foot small forward, he can guard and move his feet fast enough to guard the opposing smaller small forwards. He can make threes. He can post up smaller people defending him. He can block shots for him. And his ability to handle, put it on the floor just enough, okay, that he keeps the defense honest, that might make him the glue that ties this team all together.
So you just mentioned the players that you love when you coach the Cavs, the Hawks, and the Grizzlies. How about the players that you love to cover while working in TV? Now, I know this list has got to be endless, but give me your top 3 or 4.
Well, I'm able to throw Michael in there because
of course.
I was with NBC when I was not coaching. After that Atlanta run of 7 years, Michael still was playing. So obviously, Michael would be right at the top of the list of greatness. And the number of games I did with Kobe, another one that, greatness there. A number of big guys that I could go through, but the list then, as you said, grows longer and longer, just like the 50 all-time greatest just got longer by 25 more people because there are guys that keep getting added to the list as you go along. I was fortunate to coach one of the greatest, and that's Dominique Wilkins. He was a guy that if there were 365 games a year, he'd be there every night playing. That's just how much he loved basketball, how great he was.
What's your favorite hobby outside of basketball?
Oh God, does eating count as a hobby?
Pasta, yes.
I try and do enough of that. And I enjoy, so much of my travel and exposure to the world has come through basketball. It's been a basketball related thing. So the number of countries and places that I've had a chance to go to and visit, Italy being at the top of the list. I finally got to China a few years back, and I would love to go back there anytime. I was fascinated by China. But coaches, clinics, camps, play, international play, all of that, has allowed me to meet so many people from around the world. So I've been blessed to be involved with the game of basketball, which in turn has allowed me to do and see and meet so many people along the way.
Here's another eating question for you. Favorite restaurant in Cleveland? And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's somewhere in Little Italy.
Well, you're probably partially right, a large portion, a large percentage. But if I would not answer who's the GOAT, I'm not putting out who the favorite Italian restaurant is, because then I don't have to deal with those people all the time. So when you have your pad and paper and you want a list someday, give me a call and I'll give you a good list.
Coach, is there a favorite TV show you're currently streaming?
I barely know what shows are on. Dancing with the Stars, I like Dancing with the Stars when I get a chance to turn that on. If I'm not watching a basketball game at night, when I have an off night, then there's probably one or two. And remember, if you have the NBA package, you can watch games as late as you want at night. Those West Coast games that are getting started 10:30 out there, or 10:30 here, 7:30 out there rather. But I've had all these people tell me all these great series that they watch along the way, and that I don't even know that they exist because I haven't had a chance to watch them. I don't know, but there was something I got into, remember, a year or two ago, Pretty Little Something, that if I told it to somebody, they'd go, what? And then I kind of laugh a little bit because I'd see it on the TV screen every so often. I didn't know very much about it, but I don't know the names of so many of these great series that have come. I knew The Sopranos. I knew that. I could tell you every series in there.
All right. Favorite memory as Cavs coach? I would assume maybe playoff time, 97.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite memory is when Wayne Embry called me up and said to me that they were considering me as their next head coach and why, and talking to Mr. Gunn. And when I got the opportunity to come to Cleveland and coach, and ironically, here we are 26, 27, 28 years down the road, and I'm still a member of the Cleveland community. I love being here. It's it's become my second Hackensack, New Jersey. I have so many friends and people that I've met over the years that have been great and wonderful people here in Cleveland. So I wonder how many times a head coach goes in, gets a job, and then after 6 years, when they make a change, that guy stays on in that particular city. It'd be an interesting number to come up with, but I've stayed here, part of this community, because I love the community. I love so many things about it. So that has to be a favorite thing for me.
What's your favorite memory of the old Richfield Coliseum?
I thought it was beautiful. I thought they kept it in incredible shape. When we left, was it 20 years that it was open when we left to go
About
downtown?
20 years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm like, what do I know? What do I know about suites and corporate sponsorship and, being able to, and then also, bringing it downtown where, how many cities can you say you start on one end and go down, straight down and head towards the water, and you've got a baseball field, you got a basketball arena, and you got a football stadium, bang, 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 right in a row. So that's city planning that I never really spent a whole lot of time thinking about that along the way. But when I coached it last year in the Richfield Coliseum, I loved that place. I had coached games in the Coliseum against Cavalier teams, and then was fortunate to come in and coach, the last season with the Cavaliers before we moved downtown. So I remember the practice court upstairs. I remember the asbestos on the walls upstairs. were not a good thing, but overall, I had really good memories of that place.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I remember seeing a picture online of the practice court with the asbestos sprayed on the walls there at the old Coliseum.
Yeah, exactly. You remember the old Richfield Coliseum?
Oh, yeah.
Well, after the Coliseum, do you remember, wasn't it the Richfield Inn that we would go to after the games? The Richfield Tavern. That was the Richfield Tavern. You'd go there for a meal or two, and then that has now since been turned into a restaurant that they've done over again, invested a lot of money in, and people tell me I haven't had a chance to go to it, but people tell me it's an outstanding restaurant now. Yeah,
Mark Price was telling us about that, how that was the go-to spot to go to back in the day. And I think it was turned into a European style restaurant, I think. Something like that.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And he also would go to Whitey's. Did you go to Whitey's a lot there in Richfield?
No, I was at Whitey's once, maybe twice, but it was a legendary place.
That's
and
still
I wanted to make sure I got there. So I did get there once and maybe twice. I had a chance to go.
All right, last two, and then we'll finally let you go, Coach. If piggybacking on top of the Coliseum topic here, if you could have taken one thing from the Coliseum before they tore it down, I don't know if you're a memorabilia guy or a nostalgic guy where you have mementos or anything like that, but was there ever one thing that you saw, whether it a sign, a seat, something from the Coliseum that you wish you could have taken before they tore her down? What would it have been?
Well, I guess I'll say this, and maybe I hope it doesn't mean I get locked up for it, but I wound up with part of the floor from the Richfield Coliseum, and I wound up with it in my basement of my home. We put it down in the basement, and it took up half the basement floor. When they were going to tear it down and they were moving that stuff out of there, somehow, some way, it wound up in my basement. Now, and I did get to take something out of there.
That's awesome. So you got to tell me here, what section of the floor are you looking at? Like, is it the key? Is it the Coliseum at center court? Was it the Cavs, the two Cavs logos? And what are you talking, like a 10x8 section or smaller?
No, I'm talking about if you have a nice size lower level to your home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about half of that was covered with the floor. And in all honesty, what happened, a pipe broke one year, leaked onto the floor, and the entire floor warped where it was, bubbly all over the thing. And we had to take it out, pull it out. But I loved the fact that I had it down there and was very proud of it. And unfortunately, I had a pool table that was on top of part of it. And because of the pipe breaking and water getting all over it, it wound up warping. But it was a nice size. I'm not talking about like one of those pieces that they sell for $100 that you put your keychain on. Not like one of those. I'm talking about the real deal. A real deal. Couple of those squares that they put together when they put the floor down every night.
So do you still have it after it warped, or do you pitch it?
After we ripped it up?
Yeah.
No, we had to get rid of it. I had no more room in the house. I've pasta stored all over the place. I needed that room for pasta boxes.
It's funny, before we get to our last question, I don't know if you're aware of this. So there were 2 Coliseum floors. One is the one they cut up, the one that part that you had. And then the other one was maybe it was a practice court they had, and they donated or sold to an elementary school in Virginia. And to this day, it's still there in that school.
That's great. That is a great story. I didn't know that. That's wonderful. Because I wonder if the one upstairs on the practice court, I don't know if that was a mobile floor or not. One with as opposed to a permanent floor. You know what I'm saying? The one downstairs had to be one that was put together in segments and sections. Right. But the one upstairs, I'm wondering if that was down permanently and they had to pry it up when they wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah, because the one in the school, and you could look it up online, like you Googled Richfield Coliseum, elementary school, Virginia, you can see pictures of it. It is the exact layout of the Coliseum floor, the exact one. So I don't know. Maybe they had 2 of them and they just kept it in the back room somewhere. I don't know. But it's crazy. You see these little kids running on this floor, and they had the Cavs, the 2 blue circles, CAVS logos on the court in the school, and they were the school district head of the school district of that area there in Virginia was quoted by saying, "We're never going to paint over it. We're never going to clean it up, or never going to change it because of this is such a memorable floor, and we want our kids to play on it." So I thought that was really cool too.
Mm-hmm.
That is great. That's a great story.
So, Coach, last question. Is there
wait.
Go ahead.
There was a last question. Is this like the next last question?
Oh. We had last 2.
We had last 2. All right. So
I think this is like the second last question, but go ahead.
That's okay. Was there a potential trade when you were a coach of the Cavs that you guys are right on the cusp of making, and then for some reason that trade fell through and it didn't happen? Is there something like that you can share with us?
There was, but Big Man said to me, "If you ever tell this story, I'm going to crush you." And Big Man would do that. So I, can't talk about those. No, I don't remember one, to be honest with you. Wayne was so good at having the inside line with all the other teams. He had such a close relationship with so many front office people that he'd come into our meetings that we would have every so often with Gordon Gunn, with Dick Watson, with the front office people. Remember, Gary Fitzsimmons was here. He was Wayne's right-hand man. And then they'd present things that came up or opportunities that came up. But I don't remember one where something fell through at the last minute and we were heartbroken or destroyed over it.
Well, Coach, on behalf of my brother, John Sabol, I want to thank you so much for taking this amount of time to spend with us here with our podcast. Your recollection of dates and stories and specific plays is uncanny. And it brings back so much memories for us. And I'm sure our listeners will love to hear what you had to say here. I want to thank you very much for joining us, and have a great evening. And maybe we can talk some other time.
Scott, just 2 things. One is the stories and the dates and the times. I just figured, have something you can say. Who's going to look up those things and find out anyhow? So if they're off by a couple of years or a couple of months or a couple of days, so it's just not that much, and it doesn't hurt anybody if it was like the 12th instead of the 5th and that kind of thing. And then the other thing is, because this podcast went as long as it did, is there something like 2 jars of marinara sauce coming in the mail for doing the podcast? Does John, your brother, have contacts with that type of thing?
I know a guy.
Yeah.
I know a guy. Really, I know a girl too. I guess we can get my mom or our mom here to make a nice marinara sauce for you for her. She makes really good spaghetti sauce. So I also know a guy who can make good Alfredo sauce too. So you pick your poison. Which one you want?
I'd rather not refer to it as poison, but let me think about that for a while and I'll get back to you. Okay.
Coach, thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to meet you. And, it was great going down memory lane with you. We really do appreciate everything tonight.
Thank you so much, guys.
Take care.
So, John, we always talk about memorabilia.
Mm-hmm.
And we always ask everybody, if you would have taken one piece of something, who would have thought that Mike Fratello had basically most of a Cavs floor in his basement? I figured, man, maybe one piece. He goes, no. I had the whole thing, or at least a large portion of it. That's classic.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, that is something that I was not expecting him to say. Had in his basement there. Mark Price, when he retired, they gave him part of the floor.
Right.
I think he'll be a little jealous if he finds out Mike, or Coach Fratello rather, had quite a bit of the floor in his basement there. That was something I was not expecting. I'm a little jealous, and I have a Coliseum chair at my house here.
Right.
The one thing too I really liked on her part two is talking about the current Cavs team. The last couple of years, ever since LeBron left after 2018, there hasn't been much to talk about, and now this team looks and feels to be completely different than the last few seasons. And to have his expertise to really buy into this, and he's really high on them, was refreshing and exciting to hear, especially with this team, with this new young core here. He loves Jared Allen, loves Mobley, even loves the trade acquisition of Lauri Markkanen as well. So he agrees, Scott, that it's sustainable with this lineup, and that he thinks they could potentially make a run at that one of those last playoff spots.
And he also compared it favorably to the Cavs teams of the mid-90s when he was talking about transitioning from the 80s, early 90s Cavs team to maybe a slower paced defensive type team, the Tyrone Hill era, I like to call it, right in the mid-90s. And then you had Sean Kemp, and he right out of the gate made that comparison. And you can kind of see that. I know the NBA has changed a lot where you got a lot of threes, but you can kind of see that the comparisons here with some of the big men we have now versus what it was maybe 25 years ago.
Absolutely. You had Z, you had Potapko, you had Tyrone Hill. Now you got Markkanen, Markkanen's, he's tall too. He's not the 7-footers like an Allen or like a Mobley. Kevin Love's up there too. And then you had Taco Fall coming off the bench. I mean, the Cavs are loaded here in size. So that was great. I hope you guys really enjoyed our part one and now part two of our conversation with former Cavaliers head coach Mike Fratello. If you ever wanted to get in touch with Scott or myself, you can do that on Twitter at John_Sabol. Our podcast handle is at Sabol Brothers.
Mm-hmm. And my Twitter handle is Scott Sabol, FOX8. I also want to thank Mike Fratello for spending an hour and a half with us. He didn't have to do that. That's a lot of time. He's a busy man. He travels all over the country. Want to thank Mike Fratello for spending that much time with us, talking about Cavs, his history, because he didn't have to do that. And it was something special for us to talk to him. So thank you very much, Coach.
It was a treat for us, Scott, and it was a treat for all of you listeners out there listening here on the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast right here, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Coach, thanks again so much. If you haven't already, subscribe on Apple and Spotify. All right, Scotty, that was a great one. We'll do another one coming up here.
Have a good evening, everybody.